In the first lecture, Professor Louise said that no single fact can be considered in isolation. Starting with this idea in mind, I began my project on this singular building, the Sara Kulturhus, and wondered what was hidden beneath its timber frame. First of all, this remarkable 80-meter tall mass timber building rises above the northern Swedish town of Skellefteå and is one of the world's tallest timber buildings. Completed in October 2021, the developers of this building boasted of its sustainable energy solutions, locally sourced material, and minimal CO2 impact. Additionally, developments in CLT, cross-laminated timber, which strengthens the load-bearing capacity of timber, made it a sustainable and practical choice for developers. While news of this building and others like it are gaining in popularity, for today's presentation, I want to share my research process and findings on how this building is embedded in a larger discussion on the sustainability of forest management in Sweden. I started my research with the knowledge that the dimensions of my project were within a 60-kilometer radius of this building. However, I slowly began to learn that the dimensions of my project were not as simple as I imagined it. Briefly, this project spanned a 5-year period. As stated on Sara Kulturhus' website, this entire operation involved these companies. But a glimpse at the chronological timeline of this project reveals several major shifts in ownership. One in particular, Martinsons, was acquired by the Holmen Group. Martinsons was a family-owned construction business since the 1920s with 2 local sawmills. It was then acquired by the Holmen Group, which is one of the largest forest owners in Sweden, and from there I started to look into these new territorial boundaries. What I found was that while Holmen controls over 1 million hectares of productive forest land, this only meets 40% of their need for wood. The remainder is purchased from private forest owners and a small portion imported from sawmills in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Finland, totaling 4.2 million cubic meters of wood in 2021. Looking into Holmen's forest land, I mapped them and 5 other major forest owners in Sweden on the left, alongside protected forest areas on the right. Using Google Earth, I began to delineate the area of Holmen's forest in gray and the surrounding nature reserves in green, blue, and red. One can clearly see the fragmentation of forest lands intersecting productive and protected forest areas. Through this course, I also learned that mapping can reveal not only territorial boundaries, but of the transformation of the natural environment. The main method for harvesting timber in Sweden is clear cutting, which is the practice where most or all trees in an area are uniformly cut down for harvesting. Compared to other European countries, Sweden does not have a limit on clear cutting. This land is replanted into timber plantations, creating monocultures of trees to be further harvested. What struck me with these images was the accompanying quote that said, "Also, keep in mind that natural forests are not renewable. Trees can be planted but not forests. If you plant wheat, you get a wheat field, not a meadow. If you plant pine trees, you get a timber field, not a forest. Real forests are a complex ecosystem, a bedrock of a multitude of life and a home for many species. Biological diversity, a variety of different life forms, is the prerequisite for all living beings, including us humans." This was taken from the letter to the European Commission signed by 33 signatories, including representatives of youth movements such as Fridays for Future Sweden and 44 indigenous communities. Natural forests are not renewable, and so how does that impact the forest ecosystem and the species with which it supports? There has been criticism from indigenous communities whose lands and reindeer population depend on biodiversity-rich forests. There has also been criticism that not enough is done to protect old-growth forests, which is an important global carbon sink. Despite data which shows that there has been an increase in forest cover in Sweden since the 1920s, it does not represent the full picture. Studies found that old-growth forests which are disappearing absorb 70% more carbon than logged and replanted trees. Learning about these issues brings me back to the Sara Kulturhus, and questions arise on the sustainability of it. I ask myself, does the sustainability of this timber building change given the change in ownership and the issues associated with Sweden's forest industry? Another variable which is considered is the discussion on greenwashing, which is the practice for companies or associations to appear more environmentally friendly when instead their activities are harmful to the environment. Given the sustainable elements of the Sara Kulturhus, questions are raised on if agents involved may be greenwashing by being associated with a green product, as it is climate conscious and energy efficient. This cannot be determined in this course period, and it is more of an area of departure on thoughts of additional intersections. My final thoughts are on the idea that forests are not renewable, nor are the resources and biodiversity lost when the environment is transformed to something else. I found that it became more difficult to map and isolate different boundaries of individual forests and local ecosystems when it's so fragmented. The fragmentation is in part due to the forest management and how the majority of Sweden's forests are privately or corporate owned. Therefore, back to the beginning with the Sara Kulturhus and how this single building managed to branch out beyond Skellefteå and beyond its timber frame. Thank you.